Hello, and welcome to The Potential State. My name is Dr. Assael Romanelli, and today's my birthday. And to celebrate my birthday, and as part of the third installment of the Crucible series, I want to share with you guys a concept that is very dear to my heart, which is called differentiation. Differentiation is my ability to be connected to myself, my thoughts, my values, my feelings, and also to be close to someone else, especially when that person is very intimate and very important to me. Or said in a different way, to be close to someone without being reactive. Okay, finding that balance between autonomy and attachment. Or in other words, being more of myself and closer to others. So it's not an either or. And I'm going to infuse this with my personal journey the last few years. In the past 10 years, I've only read nonfiction books, and specifically theater improvisation books and family and couple therapy books, because those are my two blisses, those are my two passions. I teach and perform in improv, and I teach and train and treat in couple and family therapy. And about 4 or 5 years ago, I decided instead of reading every time a different book, I would embark on reading one clinician or one author throughout all of his books. So I started with Carl Whitaker, who's the father of symbolic experiential school of family therapy, and that's going to be a different talk. And then I continued with David Schnarch, who's a couple and family therapist. David Schnarch wrote 5 books. The fifth one, I have here 4. The 5th one is actually on loan to one of my clients. And basically David Schnarch is a couples therapist and a sex therapist, and he basically combined this. He kind of created a hybrid paradigm, which he calls the crucible. Right? Or this first book is Constructing the Sexual Crucible, but in short we call it the Crucible Paradigm, or differentiation-based therapy. And the past year and a half, when I was reading his books, which are very dense and a wonderful read, it really took me on a personal and professional journey, and really changed my life. It changed my marriage, it changed my practice, it changed the way I facilitate workshops, the way I lecture, the way I am in this world. And what more appropriate way than on my birthday to share this wonderful gift with you. So the actual concept of differentiation was conceived by Murray Bowen, who took it as an analogy from the world of biology, where organisms become more and more differentiated, more and more complicated, more and more separate, more and more individual, in order to work more as in a system. And he basically said that as we grow up, we differentiate, we raise in the level of differentiation. Along comes Schnarch in the early 90s, takes this concept of differentiation, expands it, and makes it much wider. And he's basically saying that in every relationship, we have two forces or two pulls that are pulling us in different directions. One side is the togetherness, right? Attachment, to be close to other people, to be loved, right? And the other force that's pulling me is individuality. I want to be myself, autonomy. So there's a part of me that's being pulled to, I want to be loved, so I'll be whatever you guys want me to be, whatever my partner likes me, or my child, or my colleague, or my friend. And there's another part of me that says, this is who I am, take it or leave it. And in the middle, there's the ability of differentiation. It is ability that goes from 0 to 100. No one ever reaches 100, obviously. You can't really measure it. There's no real assessment to it. And as you can see, the more differentiated I am, the more these two polarities, these two forces become closer and closer. It's easier and easier for me to be myself and also be close to somebody else. And I've realized that basically my job in this world, my bliss, my calling, if you will, is to help others raise differentiation by raising my own differentiation and by kind of creating crucibles. So the crucible, David Schnarch talks about, any intimate, committed relationship is a crucible. It's a hot place where you constantly are dying and reborn, and you're dying and you're being reborn. You melt and you formulate again. It's a hot place full of conflict, full of gridlocks, full of anger and pain and normal marital sadism, as we spoke about in previous episodes. And we need to keep stepping into this crucible and to grow. And here's the idea, right? Most of us are somewhere between 50 and 70. And some of us will go more to the sides of togetherness. We tend to kind of blur our personalities or bring a certain side of ourselves that gets the most positive feedback. And other of us tend to actually be more stubborn and only insist on bringing my part, who I am, and I'm not that rigid. Right? So let's say I'm 40, I'm level 40 differentiated. I will be attracting to my life people that are similarly differentiated, even though it might look differently, but I will attract these types of people into my life. I will end up marrying or being in a long-term intimate partnership with someone that's more or less at my level of differentiation. Why? Because if someone's much more differentiated than I am, he or she will experience me as either very, very volatile or not, without a kind of a clear spine. Or either I'll be an arrogant asshole that's just thinking about himself, or I'm going to be completely a yes man, or kind of almost like a little mop, a little rag that just will do whatever my partner says. Or I will move between the two polarities. I will say yes dear, yes dear, yes dear, and I'll keep accommodating, even though it's not precise for me, it's not my truth. I'll be erasing who I am, so I'll be loved, and then I'll be erupting after I can't hold it anymore and saying this is who I am, and I'll put my foot down, and I'll do all these ultimatums, right? So I marry someone, I end up in a partnership, I find workplaces that are similarly differentiated. And here's the thing, the kids that I raise will be at least in my level differentiation. That'll be the maximum they'll reach. They'll be my differentiation and lower, because they're seeing every single day a certain level of differentiation. Okay, what does a poorly differentiated relationship look like? It's either a relationship that we never fight, we never argue, right? Because fighting is a taboo. We can't do that. We call those a symbiotic partnership, where both partners on the togetherness side, and everyone's afraid of disrupting that harmony, right? You can see this in marriages and organizations and countries, okay? Or you can see partners that they're constantly fighting. Always fighting, who's right, and they're fighting over little things, from who's taking out the garbage to education to money. They can't stop fighting because they cannot find a way to bridge the differences. Another expression of poorly differentiated relationships are ones that there are cutoffs. People that haven't been talking to each other. It's families where people have not been talking to each other for decades, years, months. Kids that move to a different side of the world to run away from their parents, thinking that they've actually matured, but actually they've just gone to the individuality side. They have not raised differentiation. So both Bowen and Schnarch say that the goal of therapy, or the goal of growth, of personal development, is to keep raising differentiation. And a major concept that's connected to differentiation is what Schnarch calls a sense of self. There's two senses of self. There's a reflected sense of self, which is how we grow up, right? My perception of myself is dependent on other people, the feedback I get from other people. Am I smart? Am I funny? Am I pretty? Am I crazy? Am I a badass? Am I a rebel, right? So my sense of self is constantly being fed. And when I have a reflected sense of self, I'm going to be looking for people that love me and staying away from people that are critical toward me, which is natural. That's how we grow up. We start as children with a reflected sense of self from our parents, and as teenagers, we're at the height of peer pressure, what people think about me, who loves me. And as we grow older, that is where we start from, a reflected sense of self. Comes Schnarch and says we need to be using our frontal cortex to go to a solid sense of self. A solid sense of self is I know who I am. I know who I am, and whether you like it or not, this is my truth. This is who I am. And because when I'm in a reflected sense of self, intimacy is dangerous, because if you don't like what I'm going to say to you, if you're not open to what I'm saying, if you're not validating my feelings, then I should stay away from you, because that's dangerous, because you can really ruin my day. I had such a great day, and then you said one wrong word and I crumble. So slowly I stay away, and intimacy, or real intimacy, mature intimacy, is scary. Whereas a solid sense of self, I know kind of who I am, and I'm slowly getting closer to there. And if I'm thinking about my life in the past decade, I've been working on solidifying my sense of self. First of all as a therapist, but also as an improviser, as a husband, as a father. In some of these areas I've succeeded more than others. In others I'm still in a reflected sense of self. So these two concepts, or if you want, keep working on solidifying your sense of self, is almost like a mission, right? So whether I'm working in this clinic, or I'm facilitating a workshop, or I'm giving a talk, I'm aiming to constantly monitor my level of differentiation. How much can I be myself? Even in this video, on one hand, I want to be presentable, I want to be coherent, I want to be liked by you, but I also want to be connected to my authenticity, to my truth. And that's connected to one more concept which I want to bring, and the rest I'll be bringing throughout the Crucible series, is this concept of intimacy, which we spoke about in previous episodes. So there's two types of intimacy. Other validated intimacy, right? I will only share if you share. I will only share if you validate my feelings. This needs to be a safe space. And if it's not a safe space, I'm not going to share. And that's how we all start, right? And that feeds into a reflected sense of self. Because if you're not open to hearing what I want to say, if my wife never has the patience to listen to me, then I'm never going to open up. So in fact, the keys to the intimacy of my life, of my relationships, are in the others. And I'm constantly waiting for them to be open, positive, validating, hospitable for what I want to share. And if not, I'm not sharing. And once again, there's an invitation to use your prefrontal cortex and go to a self-validated intimacy, which means I'm going to share. I hope you like it, but if you don't, that's also fine. I'm solid enough in who I am, and I'm going to share. And the self-validated intimacy feeds into the solid sense of self. So the more I can share without looking for approval, without waiting for validation, the more I'm solidifying myself. The more I'm opening up in front of my friends, colleagues, partner, kids, and sharing stuff, owning my shit, sharing about my shadow, knowing my shortcomings, knowing my strengths, not apologizing for it. I'm slowly solidifying my sense of self, and that enables me to become closer and closer, raising differentiation, because I'm bringing more of myself in a way that's not aggressive or defensive or in victim mode, and I'm slowly feeling more and more comfortable to come closer to other people. Intimacy doesn't become a scary endeavor anymore. It might get hot, it might get conflict filled, but it's the way forward. And throughout entering more and more crucibles in my life, I'm solidifying my sense of self. I'm becoming more myself, and I'm more vital. And I can see these. I'm going to give just two examples, one professional, one personal. So I'm working now with a family with 3 adult children. And what's fascinating when you're working with 3 people at the same time, in a poorly differentiated family, what's happening is it's really hard to have a conversation with one person, because at any given moment, the other 2 are intruding, are pulling the focus over there. It becomes what Bowen calls an undifferentiated ego mass, or what I call it's like a soup, where everyone's connected. It's not really clear where one person begins and the other one is starting. It's hard to have a one-on-one conversation. It's hard to like go all the way down and understand someone, because at any given moment somebody else is going to intrude, or we're going to change the topic, or it's either me or them. Another core belief that poorly differentiated couples have, or families, that your pain equals my responsibility or my fault. Okay, so every time a partner will share a pain, the other partner immediately gets defensive, needs to either fix it, or feels responsible or guilty. And a lot of what I do also in therapy and also in workshop is to help people just let it land. We said about empathy, not sympathy, just to hear the criticism, hear the pain of my partner, of my son, of my colleague, and just breathe into that. We call that grounded responding. So whatever energy or feeling my partner is, or my colleague is, or my son or my daughter, it doesn't mean that I have to be in that same energy. It doesn't mean that their pain is my responsibility. Even if I cause that pain, it doesn't mean that I need to immediately be reactive and get triggered by that. Because what happens is, if every time my partner shares a pain, I get reactive and I get triggered, he or she is going to slowly stop sharing, because it's just going to be annoying. You're going to be stuck. And what you want to be is bring more of yourself. You don't want to be eggshelling. The amount of people and couples and families I meet, that they're eggshelling around each other. They're not bringing their true self, their whole self, all their different shades of themselves, because they're poorly differentiated, because everything I say about me is a reflection on you, and you feel defensive, and then you get angry or you get hurt. And if you get insulted, then I need to say I'm sorry for even sharing my feelings, and it's a vicious cycle. And once again, parents give it to their children, children give it to their children, and I attract to my life people that are the same level of differentiation, and I just repeat these patterns, these dances again and again and again. And I want to give another example with Galid, my wife. So we came from very different family stories, but only 7 years into our marriage, I realized when I was reading this material that we're the same level of differentiation. She comes from a house of firestorms, of thunderstorms, where fighting is very clear. I come from a house that are turtles, where conflict is under the table. And for a long time, it was hard for us to find a balance, right? It seemed like she was more open and okay with conflict, and I was less, but it actually took me a while to realize we're at the same level of differentiation. We just have different ways. She would get angry, and I would immediately try to make a peace by going to togetherness, apologizing or shrinking. I would shrink until I would fight, and we'd be stuck in this. And slowly, through reading these books, through practicing this, through therapy, through reading and rereading, it became clear to me that I can stand next to Galit, breathe. Schnarch says to hold on to yourself and enter the crucible. I'll give a little example how it feels like a pocket of poorly differentiated interaction between me and her. When I talk to her and she suddenly goes on her phone and checks WhatsApp or checks an email, I get triggered, I get angry, I feel offended. And in the past, I used to really get angry at her, and I would either yell at her or I'd get insulted, or there'd be a whole drama. And in the past year or so, I'm trying to work on just to breathe. She's making that choice, and I'm holding on to myself. It's not an either me or her. It can be me and her. We can be in different places. I can be very upset and she can be very happy. And that doesn't mean she doesn't love me. It just means she's a different human being. And now I want to give the 4 points of balance that Schnarch calls about as the 4 tips. How to raise differentiation, which is actually, if you want, the quest of life through this paradigm, or in my perception. I'm constantly trying to raise my own differentiation for my own sake, for my marriage's sake, for my kids' sake, for my clients, my students, because at the end of the day, I can only raise other people's differentiation to my own level. And I think a lot of the hypocrisy of the helping professions is we are not working on our own differentiation. We're telling our clients, our learners, they should raise differentiation when we don't have the ability to do it. When we have problems with conflict, with intimacy, with bringing ourselves, with owning our shit, with bringing our shadows up front into the light. So here are 4 tips or 4 points how to raise differentiation. The first part is to develop a flexible, solid sense of self, which basically means knowing who you are, owning your shit, stopping to suppress and deny and dissociate parts of yourself that you don't like, warts and all. This is who I am. I have strong points, I have weak points, I have aggressive parts, I have sexual parts, I have childish parts, I have vindictive parts, I have jealous parts, I also have very smart parts. All of these self-states, we call them in relational psychotherapy, they're all part of me. And the more I can own it and accept it, the more I have a solid sense of self. And that enables me to step into intimacy, to step into relationships, to put myself out there and not feel scared. The second point is grounded responding. Grounded responding is being able to let whatever my partner says, let it land. I'm empathy, I'm not sympathy, I'm not being insulted, I'm not getting triggered. She can express her pain, he can express his pain, and that doesn't mean anything about me. It doesn't say anything about who I am, and I can listen to it. It doesn't break me because my partner is upset with me. The third point is quiet mind, calm heart, is learning how to self-soothe and regulate yourself. I've spoken previously about self-talk, which is one of the tools that I use. I just talk to myself, I hear myself out, I calm myself down. If I need to take a time out, and then I come step back into the crucible. And the last thing is meaningful endurance. And meaningful endurance is the idea that all this is worthwhile. All of these books, these 10,000 hours in therapy, 170 books in this clinic, all this reading, all this blood, sweat, and tears of my marriage, of my parenting, of my clients, of performances, it's all worthwhile because the only way around is through. And the only way I can grow is through the pain and through the growth and through the ruptures and through the repairs. And if I have to close it, my wish for this year, for my next year, is to keep raising differentiation, keep bringing more of myself, keep stepping out of my comfort zone, broadcasting to the world my beliefs, my views, being more of myself and closer to others. And I wish for all of you to raise differentiation in your own journeys, in your own relationships, so you don't feel alone, so you can feel like you're lived. And if this is your last day on earth, that you brought yourself, warts and all. So happy birthday to me, and good luck to all of us. My name is Dr. Assael Romanelli, and this was The Potential State. I'll see you next time.